Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining me for another restful episode of true, scary stories to help you fall asleep. Today, we're going to be reading true, scary, let's not meet horror stories. I hope you enjoy them. So, without further ado, lay back, relax, and enjoy these true, scary stories. I went to a wedding of my friend Courtney about 2 days ago, and I still can't shake my mind over what happened. For context, I grew up in a very religious household and went to church every Sunday, and Courtney is probably the only person from my old church that I still keep in contact with. The situation started at the reception. Courtney was super excited to see me, and was definitely the only person who felt that way judging from all the stares from the people at my old church. I sat down at my table and started playing something on my phone when some guy sat next to me. He said that the seating chart said that he was supposed to sit at my table, and he introduced himself as the groom's friend Anthony. He was pretty cute, so I spent a lot of time talking to him and we really hit it off. He didn't seem to judge me for being an atheist and seemed genuinely interested in me. When the dance started, they started playing Brown Eyed Girl, and he offered to dance with me. We danced together for most of the night, until he left to go to the bathroom, and a little later I did too. When I came out, I saw that my purse wasn't on the table, which was weird because I swore I left it on there. I was tired, and thought I had just left it in my car, so I went to the parking lot and into my car to look for it, and found it on the center console. I still thought it was weird, because I really thought that I had brought it inside, but at that point it was pretty late at the night, so I didn't think much of it. I danced some more and noticed that Anthony was gone. I asked the groom, who said he had gone home because he wasn't feeling too good. Pretty soon I felt sick too, so I said goodbye to Courtney and went to my car. As I put my keys in the ignition, I looked behind me and saw something weird. It looked like something had ducked down from the trunk. I took my keys out and looked back there, and that was when I saw him. Anthony was crouched down in front of the trunk of my car. I started screaming and ran out with him chasing after me. I went inside and told Courtney, who immediately told her husband, who walked me back to my car where Anthony was nowhere to be seen. Courtney's husband said that he didn't see his car anywhere, so he probably left. I left, and I still feel sick to my stomach thinking about it. He could have easily gone home with me and killed me if I hadn't looked back. Courtney said that she feels terrible that she invited him, and that she had no idea that he would do that. I haven't stepped out of my house since, because I'm worried that if I do, he'll be waiting for me, like he was before. My mom was a single mother of 3 in the early 2000s, and eventually started going on dates when I was about 6. I remember the first time I met him. He made me feel uncomfortable, but my mom shrugged it off because I was a shy kid. She had done her due diligence and Googled his name, coming across a court case, him versus state. It listed him as a convicted felon of murder from back in the early 80s. I don't know how, but he convinced her that it was a mistake. I guess because he had a very generic name, she believed him. We were raised by him, called him Dad, even at one point asking him to adopt us. The adoption never happened, thank God. He was a good dad to us, at first. Things started to get weird when I turned 12. Suddenly, I wasn't allowed to have sleepovers, wasn't allowed to choose my own haircuts, wasn't allowed to watch TV. It escalated to padlocks on the fridge and pantry, having to ask permission to drink water, and never being allowed in the kitchen past 8 p.m. He was a master manipulator, so at the time we all thought it sucked, but was normal punishment, despite us not having done anything to deserve it. I lost my door for weeks, on end, for stupid stuff like forgetting to do the dishes after dinner. Once, when I was 16, I wanted to not go to my brother's soccer game so that I could study, and he went into a blinding rage. I think that was the first time that I was ever truly afraid of him. He was a large man, probably 4 times my weight at the time. I think that was the first time that his mask fully slipped in front of me. He started being weird and creepy towards me once I turned 18. One night as I was sleeping, he came into my room and laid in my bed, saying that he loved me. I was so tired that I didn't even have time to think of how creepy it was until much later. I pushed him out of my room and went back to bed. The next day, while me and my family were gone, he'd stayed behind. He trashed my sister's room for no reason. She was only about 11 at the time and was very upset. He gave her the middle finger, and my mom finally lost it, telling him to pack up his stuff. He brandished a gun, waving it in my face before taking off in his car. We called the cops, and after nearly getting shot, he was arrested. We found out that he was a murderer when his bond was set at $250,000. He tried to lie to my mom again, but it didn't work this time. I looked up the case, and it was way worse than just a murder. He'd beaten someone to death with a metal pipe late at night in a highly populated park. I did not know this man. Not truly. Neither had my mom. He got out on bond. No idea who paid for that. And tried to come back to the house. I was the only one home, and I had no idea my siblings had not locked the door when they left for the day. I was cooking pasta before heading to work when I heard the front door open. I peered my head to the front door, and my blood ran cold as I saw him standing there. He said something to me, but I don't remember what it was. I ran to the bathroom and locked the door, not even bothering to turn off the stove. I pressed up against the bathroom door and called my mom as he banged on the door, asking me why I didn't love him. I was so afraid that I nearly sent myself into an asthma attack. My mom had a family friend come by and pick me up. When they entered the house, he wasn't there anymore. That was the last time I saw him, back in 2017. He'd helped raise me and my siblings for 13 years. He was the closest thing that I ever had to a normal dad, which, given everything, is kinda sad when I think about it too much. I can't help but worry that I'll fall back into the same toxic and manipulative relationship. It's what I knew growing up after all. Maybe that's why I keep people at a distance now. The reason I thought about this recently is because some true crime TikToker actually covered the story on the man he murdered all those years ago, and I stumbled across it. One of his daughters even commented on the post, giving more details about what it was like growing up with him. It was odd, thinking that so many of my peers could put 2 and 2 together if they had seen the TikTok. I know I'm a victim in all of this, but I can't help but feel shame that I was connected to this man and his atrocities. I could end this with a typical "so let's never meet again," but I know we won't, because he died. I didn't go to the funeral. Almost nobody did. From what my mom told me, not even his parents went. The last thing I want to say is please don't give my mom any hate. She was manipulated into believing that he was a good man, and we've made peace with her on this particular subject. A lot of the things that I mentioned happening in my childhood were things that she didn't know about until he was already dead. One more thing, since this is a popular subreddit. If you know who I am based on this story, please keep it to yourself. This all started when I was 20, so about 7 years ago. I've stayed with my parents on and off for years, but recently it became very concerning. Whenever I stay with them, it's overnight. Around 1 to 1:30, I wake up to a small thud. I always figured it was my cat jumping down, or just one of those dream awakenings. As I'm older now and living at home again pursuing a nursing degree, I try to do more than just give money. I help out around the house or do things that'll show my appreciation. This week, I decided I was going to do a clean on the windows, more than a spray down, like scrub the panes and crevices. In like 10 years it's never been done. That's when it happened. As I got to my window, I sprayed it down with Windex to let it set. But that's when I saw it. Handprints all over the glass, much larger than anyone who lives in our home. Like, I wear an XL glove. This would be special order type size of prints. So I set up a cam and a floodlight a few weeks ago, just to try and quell my possible insanity and overthinking. But there's a person who came up the driveway on the camera and stayed at my window at 1:14 a.m. for around 22 minutes from the timestamp, just looking in, and then he just left. I sprayed the windows again. Fresh prints. The police have been contacted, and we've gotten a drive-away alarm. But for your safety, buddy, let's never meet. I'm a 22-year-old woman. I went to the mall to do some shopping for a few clothes. I went to maybe 5 shops, and in the last shop I bought a pair of heels that another woman wanted. She said a few mean things in the shop after I bought them and walked out. I then went to the bathrooms. I didn't realize at the time, but she had seen me walk in. As I was in the cubicle, I heard her walk in and lock the bathroom door. She then knocked on the door and told me that she wanted the shoes. I knew this woman was crazy from the encounter that we had in the store. Not like she was going to like the high heels I had just bought, as she was a bigger woman and I didn't think that she would fit in them. I was very firm in saying no to her and unlocked the door of the cubicle and went to go to wash my hands. That's when things started to get physical. When my back was turned, she grabbed me by the hair and demanded that I let them go. I'm not going to get into what happened, but she ended up stealing the shoes and taking my bag along with ripping all the buttons off of my dress. I straight away went to the security office, but they said because the offense wasn't caught on camera, that there was nothing they could do. I've flown with my 1-year-old solo nearly a dozen times. Usually people are understanding and kind about me having a baby on my lap, and overall he's a happy, easy baby. He's also very cute, so it's not uncommon for strangers to talk to him. Usually I don't mind. The last trip I took, I sat alone in my aisle, with a man sitting by himself directly behind me. My baby was tired and fussing. I knew he was tired, but there's not a lot I could do until after we took off. Right out of the gate, the man behind me was talking to my baby, saying, "Oh, hi, baby. Why sad, baby? Cute, cute baby." I smiled and replied that he was tired and sorry for the fuss. Thank you. After takeoff, I started to get him settled for a nap. The man behind us continued to talk to my baby, putting his hand through the seats to try and grab his feet. Multiple times I asked him nicely to please stop. The baby was tired. You're distracting him. He just needs a nap. Finally, I sat my baby down next to me. He stood on the floor facing the seat next to me so that I could make a bottle. The man behind me stood up and reached over my seat to pick him up. I immediately leaned forward to pick up my baby, saying, "No, thank you. I don't need help. Please, no. No, thank you." The man pushed me back into my seat while mumbling, "Sweet baby, why cry, baby?" I replied very loudly, "No," and quickly picked up my baby. I thought that that was the end of that. I was wrong. I tried to rock my baby to sleep while desperately trying not to lose my cool. As I'm rocking my baby, the man behind me reached through our seats to grab my arm, saying, "No rocking, no rocking, you make him cry." I pulled free from him and yelled, "Do not touch me." Again, I thought that that would be the end. I started rocking the baby for a second time. This time, the man behind me reached both his hands around either side of my seat to hold me in place, saying, "No, no rocking, stop rocking." I am somewhat embarrassed that I completely lost it, clutching my baby to my chest while struggling to get free of him. It hurt. I hit the call light while screaming, "Let me go, do not touch me. Let me go, let me go, let me go." He was still holding me by my arms when the flight attendants came running. I could barely get anything out to the flight attendants. Everyone around us was staring. I was sobbing, and all I could get out was that I could not sit there anymore, and for the love of God, please move me. The man behind me tried to move with me, but I told the flight attendants that I did not know him and he could not come with me. I had a good cry in my new seat, but my baby immediately went to sleep. I was moved to the next to the flight attendants' seats. After calming down, I explained to the flight attendants what had happened. Multiple times, the man that had been behind me got up to try to come back to my new seat, only to be turned around by one of the flight attendants. Towards the end of the flight, one of the flight attendants told me that they'd explained everything to the pilot, and the pilot had called the FBI and local police to escort the man off the flight. I would also be escorted off, as well as everyone around us that watched everything happen. He cheered as he was escorted off. I had to interview with the FBI and nearly missed my next flight. After my trip was done, I had to fly back going through the same airport. It was stressful and emotional to say the least, even knowing that he was banned from the airline and the airport. I haven't flown since. To the man that tried to grab my baby from me and then wouldn't let go of me, let's never meet again. My fiance and I had just left a sober living house about a month ago. We had been clean for almost a year now and are doing really good. We graduated from the sober living and found a cute little 3-bedroom house. We gave the landlord the money and went over to the house to start loading our stuff inside. There was a little shed out back, so we walked back there and opened it up to put some of the boxes inside. Beneath a piece of plywood, my fiance saw something moving. He thought it was an animal, so he walked over and picked up the piece of plywood. There was a homeless crackhead sleeping under there with his crack pipe and syringe still in hand. We tried to be nice to him and explained that we're moving in, and that he would have to go find somewhere else to sleep. We even told him about the program we had just left, and that it was a really good place, and offered to give him the phone number. The dude narrows his eyes at us angrily and says, "I don't need anything from nobody. I don't trust nobody either, and neither should y'all." The way he said it was absolutely creepy. He strode off down the road and kept glaring back at us. That should have been our clue to not move in, but we had already given the landlord money and felt that we were without any other option at this point. So we moved our things in and tried to get comfortable over the next couple of days. A few days later, my fiance was at work and this same guy was standing in the road just staring at my house like a maniac. It was just me and a girlfriend home alone, so I was terrified. I called my fiance and told him what was going on, but by the time he was getting ready to leave work, dude had already vanished. I don't know what he was planning on doing, and I swear I'm not one to judge people. I'm a recovering addict myself and I've been homeless more than once. But the whole thing was just really ominous and threatening. About a week later, there was a shooting death about 3 houses down from us. That was it. We packed our stuff and left, and said screw that house. I don't know who was involved in the shooting, but after we packed our stuff and left, a friend of mine was telling me that the guy we found in our shed was also a convicted R-wordist that had just been released from prison, and that's why he was homeless. Needless to say, I don't want to ever meet that guy again, nor will I ever go back to that neighborhood. We moved 2 hours away and are now staying with my mom. I'll start this story by saying that I'm a 32-year-old woman. I am 170 centimeters and have generic back problems, which make it hard for me to lift too heavy things, let alone try to fight. I live in Denmark, in places where it is very normal not to lock your doors even at night. The biggest thing that ever happened to me was someone mistook my home for a neighbor's, and they bolted out of the house when they realized they had taken the wrong door. This did not happen at my home, but at my childhood home in the middle of nowhere. My childhood home is a house surrounded by wheat fields, and is down a gravel road that has 2 other houses down at it. Childhood home house is the first house down this gravel road. I was house setting the house for my stepfather, because he couldn't take his 2 dogs, a Rottweiler and a roundabout mix, also a big dog, with him on his trip. I was alone with them for around a week. Nothing happened this week, but it was the last night I stayed there that something did. I was woken up by the dogs barking. They always do this when cars drive down the dirt road. It was normal, and I tend to tell them off and go back to sleep. This time, I saw a light coming inside the room that I slept in. That can only happen if you drive into the driveway. It was in the middle of the night, 2 o'clock at night, and that was what got me up quickly. Luckily, I had the driveway gate closed, but I did not like that some random car in the middle of the night was parking in the small patch between the dirt road and the gate. So I did the only thing that I could do at the moment. I let the dogs outside and hoped that would discourage whoever it was to even try anything. They're loud, and they sound worse than they really are. It did make whoever was driving the car move the car and drive away. They drive up to my first neighbor, who I can see up to because the dirt road lies on a very small hill. They didn't drive in as I thought they would do. They came back down to me again and began to drive very slowly past my house again. At this time, I stood outside at the front door with the light on and watched the car. I didn't like how slow it drove past, but the dogs were still freaking out at the gate. So whatever they were thinking about, they reconsidered and drove away faster this time. I have no idea what the car was doing down the dirt road at this time of night. The main road is more than big enough for you to turn up there instead of going down a dirt road. I don't know what would have happened if the dogs hadn't woken me up, and I have them for my protection. The story goes back to 90s. I was 7 or 8 and going home from school. A 5-minute walk in a safe district. But there was something waiting for me on my way home that day. I remember a man with a big hand reaching to me to shake my small one, and there was another man leaning on a car with its doors open. I shook his hand. I remember him not wanting to let go. He started asking me questions about school and teachers. I was answering while trying to liberate my hand. Then my best friend showed up, shouted my name watching us. Then the man stopped smiling, let loose my hand and went to the car looking frustrated. My friend looked scared and serious. I totally forgot about this 2 minutes of my life because I didn't know what tragedy I escaped. Then somehow the memories re-emerged after 20 years, and I understood that it was a kidnapping attempt. In college, 2008 to 2014, I was an avid metal detectorist. I knew of an old military trail and river crossing way back in a secluded portion of the woods that I knew not many others were aware of. I finally decided one winter morning that I was going to go and metal detect it finally. The trail is about a mile or 2 from a city park along the South Concho River in San Angelo, Texas. I parked my truck, got all my gear, which included a serrated knife for digging, and began my trek through the raw woods and brush for the trail. About halfway into the trees, I get into a clearing and find a tent and campsite about 40 yards back from the river, and very isolated. There's cans lying all around it. some clothes, and other stuff that made it evident that someone was using it. I didn't hang around it for long and kept on my way. As I was getting past the tent, this haggard-looking guy comes out of the brush just a few feet from me. I startled him as much as he startled me, and after some innocent chit-chat back and forth, he asked what I was doing in the woods. I told him about the old trail, my metal detecting stuff, and lied that it was a pretty well-known site for hobbyists like me. The latter seemed to get him a bit anxious. He starts asking me if I've messed with his campsite any, and I told him no, except for accidentally stepping on one of the cans. He was mostly concerned if I had looked into the tent itself though, which, truthfully, I hadn't. The guy related that his wife had kicked him out of their apartment a few days ago, and he was just staying in the woods until he got back on his feet. Didn't really add up in my mind, but I didn't ask anything else about it. Finally, I told him that I was going to get on my way, and with a weird look on his face, he suggested that I not go behind his campsite because he had recently used the bathroom back there. Whether there was fresh fertilizer back there or not, there was no way that I was going to be hanging around much longer regardless. I went a little further towards the trail that I wanted to metal detect, but never felt quite comfortable. So I made a quick turn towards the river and headed back to my truck fairly rapidly. Never saw the guy again until about 2 years later. His picture was in the local news for being apprehended by authorities for the murder of his wife. He killed her, and then buried her in the exact area of the woods where I encountered him on that day. Apparently, even though I can't recall if it was the very day of the crime or not, he had just completed the matter when we met. This happened in 1996, in my hometown of about 100,000 people. I was 15 years old, from the suburbs, and went to a high school in the city. English is not my first language, so I apologize for any grammatical mistakes. I finished with class, and for some reason, I decided to walk to the main bus station instead of just waiting at the nearest bus stop. I stood at the gate that my bus line, number 15, starts from. Another bus line, number 17, also starts from the same gate. After waiting for around 10 minutes, a man asks me if bus number 17 had taken off yet. I say yes, I'm sorry. You've just missed it. The man, who looked to be around 30 or 40, then introduces himself to me as Mark. He stretches out his hand for me to shake it. I don't want to be impolite, so I do. I introduce myself as Maya. My name is not Maya. It was bizarre to me that a grown man is introducing himself to me at a bus station. I may have been 15, but I knew better. He asks if I just finished school. I say yes. He asks me what school I go to. I lie. He asks if I'm going home. I say no, even though I am. He asks where I'm going. I say to a friend's house. My bus pulls up and I get on it. Strangely, this man, Mark, gets on as well. I know for a fact he'd asked me if number 17 had taken off yet. If he was originally planning on going on number 17, there is absolutely no reason to get on my bus number 15. They don't have a single stop in common. I sit down and he sits himself next to me. He asks me which year of high school I'm in. I lie and say I'm a junior. I was actually a freshman at the time. He says I look too young to be a junior. I say I hear that all the time. He asks me if I have a boyfriend. I say no, he says that I should. I then ask him where he is going. He says he's going home. I ask if he wasn't planning on taking number 17. He says no, and tells me he lives at the very end of the bus line 15. That was odd. I've never seen him on the bus before. He asks me if I'm on my way home as well. I say no, I'm visiting a friend. Looking back, he knew I was lying. I was sure he believed me, and I really thought I had the situation under control. I should have walked up to the bus driver and told him what's going on. I didn't, because I just wasn't scared enough and I didn't want to make a scene out of nothing. There were plenty of people around, and while he was strange, I really thought he's just a harmless, lonely weirdo. We get to my stop. I purposefully miss it and get off at the next one, thinking I'll fool him and then just walk home a bit longer. To my surprise, he gets off as well. I ask him where he's going, and he says he wants to walk me home. Again, I tell him that I'm not going home. I'm visiting a friend. He says that's fine, he'll walk me. I say he really doesn't need to, and in a stern, irritated tone, he tells me to shut up and walk. There is no one on the street. We're the only ones who got off the bus here. I'm alone with this weird man who followed me from the bus station. I can't go home because I don't want him knowing where I live. I start panicking. I don't know what to do, so I just freeze and stand there, silent. In an instant, he went from weird but chatty and smiley to telling me to shut up. And I went from feeling in control to knowing I really messed up. He puts his hand on my shoulder and tells me that he doesn't have much time, so we should get going. I want to tell him that he clearly does, but I don't want to anger him, so I just nod. He tells me that if I'm good, I don't have to be scared of him. I lie and say I'm not. He asks me if that means I plan on being good. I say yes. He forced me to repeat it in a whole sentence. Yes, I will be good. I begin walking. I don't know where I was going, I just walked. He walked with me with his hand still on my shoulder. I was never religious, but I remember praying that I don't pass out. My heart was beating so fast, and breathing was so difficult. I was sure I'm about to collapse and die. Then, I spotted an older man tending his garden in front of a house. That's the last thing I clearly remember. I have a vague memory of running. I was later told that I was screaming for help while running towards the older man, while Mark ran off. The older man called the police and they contacted my parents. The police couldn't do anything but take my statement. Since my parents both worked and couldn't take me to and from school, they bought me a phone the very same day. This was in the 90s, when mobile phones were a luxury. I wish the story ended here. After the event, I only ever got on the bus at the stop right in front of my school. A few weeks passed and I did so like I did any other day. We locked eyes as soon as I stepped on. He was on the bus with the biggest grin on his face, like he couldn't be more excited to see me. I was so creeped out I immediately got off and ran into the school. I called my mom in tears and she had me find a teacher to walk me to her car when she came to get me. The school was then notified of the situation. After that, he was spotted walking around the school several times, sometimes a few days in a row, but sometimes he wasn't seen for weeks. The police was of no help. They couldn't do anything until he actually hurt me, or showed up on the school property or at my home. I spent the rest of the year waiting in the school until late afternoon, so my mom could pick me up after work. We always took a very long route home. I now know she was making sure we weren't getting followed. My parents then had me switch schools. Thankfully, he was never spotted in my neighborhood, and I'm very sure he never found out my name or got my address. I only ever saw him one more time. I was 21, in my hometown, on summer break from university. I saw him in a grocery store in a whole different part of town. He didn't recognize me, didn't even look at me, but I immediately recognized him. Where I live, there is no convicted criminal list like in the US. Such cases are not reported, and I never found out the man's full name. I have no idea who he is, or what he has done in the past. I don't know what he would have done to me. My belief is that he was mentally challenged, saw me, liked me, and followed me. My mother believes that it had been much more complex, that he was planning something and that he knew exactly where we're going. My dad still doesn't talk about it. I'm just happy he's out of my life. So I recently got a job at Walmart in online grocery. And while I don't talk to customers nearly as much as cashiers or customer service, I do have to answer a lot of questions and direct people to items they can't find. There are plenty of stupid people who don't look before asking me where something is, and people who are just plain rude. But besides this one encounter, I haven't really had a problem with creepy men. At my past jobs, I was used to men making horrible comments about my body and body mods.
But I guess at Walmart, there's always someone weirder walking around, so I don't get as many. It started at around noon when I went out on my first pick run of the day. I was in the soda aisle struggling to fit a box pack of beer into my cart when this guy came up and helped me. He was probably in his early to mid-20s. This kind of adds to the creep factor because I only recently turned 18 and haven't switched out my yellow name tag yet. A bigger guy, a bit shorter than me, wearing a Korn shirt. I thanked him for helping me and said I liked his shirt. He said it was no problem and complimented my hair. No big deal, right? I pick up my handheld and get back to bagging soda and praying that I don't get sent on exceptions that night. Around 15 minutes later, I'm in the soup aisle, crouched on the floor, bagging 20 cans of Dinty Moore. Not my finest moment. Someone walks up behind me and says, "Excuse me?" I'm already excited to talk to them. Nobody, and I mean nobody, says excuse me when they want my attention. I stand up and turn around to see the same guy. He says he's been looking everywhere, and he can't find the baking soda, and that he knows he probably passed it, but he wants to make sure he's looking in the right area. The baking aisle is just a few over, and what a coincidence. The next thing I need for my run is bread flour. I tell him I'm heading over to the aisle the baking soda is in right now, and I'll show him where it is. He says thank you. I finish scanning in the Dinty Moore, and we head over. It was a Tuesday, and completely dead. Like, I was seeing my coworkers more often than customers. We get to the baking aisle, and I show him the baking soda before getting to picking out the bread flour. I had a lot to pick from in that aisle, so I was there for a good 10 minutes picking different items, and I couldn't help but notice that he put a tiny box of Arm & Hammer into his cart, and was just standing there on his phone, occasionally looking at me. A little strange, but maybe he's texting someone and is feeling a bit awkward that neither of us has left the aisle. Who knows? I finish my pick run, stage the totes onto the cart, and bring it to the back. I go on 2 more runs before my first 15-minute break, and I catch a glimpse of Corn Guy every so often. I figure he's just having a hard time finding stuff because the Walmart I work at is massive, and continue on with my day. I go into the break room to eat the salad I had in the fridge and drink a cherry Pepsi while getting that good gossip from one of the guys from customer service. And life is good. For a second, I thought I saw Corn Guy walk past the door, but I figured it was just an employee wearing the same shirt and didn't think of it again until later. My manager tells me to do 3 more pick runs before I go to the back to start dispensing orders, and I head out on a produce run. Easily one of the worst types, as the produce section is super confusing and always crazy busy. I get to the produce section and start doing my thing when I see Corn Guy standing next to the corn stand. I laugh to myself for a second before realizing that it's 1:30 at this point, and this guy has been at Walmart for at least an hour and a half. There are only 3 things in his cart. I try not to look in his direction so he doesn't try to talk to me and get back to bagging onions and weighing apples. At this point, I'm getting some serious weirdo vibes from this guy. He walks up to me and says hi. I say hi back and ask him if he needs anything. He proceeds to go on the creepiest tirade I've ever heard. I remember almost exactly what he said because I was standing there in absolute horror the entire time while holding a bag of apples. He said, "I just wanted you to know that you don't need to eat salad if you don't want to. You don't need to lose weight. If you're trying to impress that guy you were talking to, you should go for someone who would love you for who you are, not someone who would want to change you like that. You are so beautiful." I stare at this man in shock. For one, I eat salads for lunch because I like salad. It sure ain't a healthy salad either. Those things are loaded with Caesar dressing and bacon bits. Second of all, I have a boyfriend already. It's not Gavin from customer service. And he's also fat and could not care less what I eat. Third of all, I take offense that some random creep thinks that I have been waiting all my life to be validated by him. A man who spends all day at Walmart without even being paid for it. Needless to say, I am horrified, embarrassed because he just said this in front of multiple other customers who are giving us weird looks, and pissed off by the audacity of this weirdo. I can't tell him any of this. I stick with telling him that I think that's inappropriate for him to say. He needs to stay out of employee-only areas like the break room, and if he needs anything else, he can go ahead and talk to customer service. He looks shocked as if this wasn't the nicest way I could have ended the conversation, and I end my pick run early to go talk to a manager. In the back, I tell my manager about Corn Guy, how he's been following me, and how I'm not going back out to pick tonight unless we know for sure that he's gone. She's understanding, and lets me start dispensing early, and sends one of the guys in the back to pick in my place. The rest of the day goes okay, except when my coworker and I go out together to take a huge order to one of the spots in the main parking lot, and Corn Guy is sitting on the bench out front. I prayed that he was just waiting for someone to pick him up, and refused to take out any more orders to the main lot. I managed to put away returns without seeing him, and with minimal trouble, and at 8 I go back to OGP, turn in my handheld and key card, and say goodbye to everyone left. I always park in the main lot right in front of the grocery section, and as I'm walking it's just starting to get a bit dark. It had been raining on and off the whole day, and it was the perfect balance of summer warmth and cold rain outside. As I'm unlocking my old CRV, I see the Corn Guy approaching me. I'm scared of what he wants from me, but at this point I have my keys out, and the pepper spray on the chain is clearly visible, so I'm hoping he isn't stupid enough to try something. He walks up to me and starts trying to talk. I shut him down, tell him that he has been following me all day. Reminder that he has been at Walmart for a full 8 hours at this point, and I am uncomfortable talking to him. I am off the clock, and if he needs something regarding Walmart, he can go talk to customer service. And if he wants to talk to me personally, I'm not interested, and he needs to leave me alone. He has the nerve to look offended, and then says something that tops his salad rant in terms of stupid stuff to say to a random woman. Okay, since you're gonna be like that, I won't ask you out, ungrateful jerk. I thought you were cool and could maybe understand me, but you're just like every other girl. I'm too morbidly curious. I ask him what that means. I mean, you seem cool. I don't see anyone around here with ears stretched that big, or who can appreciate Corn's artistry. I thought maybe you were on my level, but you're just like every other stupid Midwesterner in this crappy town. At the end of this little rant, he digs in the pocket of his sweatpants and produces the crappiest little switchblade I've seen in my life. This pitiful little thing couldn't skin a hamster. I'm somehow even more offended. First, I've been stalked all day because I have stretched ears and complimented a guy's band shirt. Second, he thinks Korn is some deep-cut metal band that nobody else has ever heard of. Third of all, we do live in Iowa, but we live in one of the largest cities in Iowa, and this Walmart is right in the middle of it. And fourth, he's not only threatening me with a knife for not living up to his manic pixie dream girl fantasy, but thinks I'm going to be scared of that pathetic excuse of a knife. At this point, I'm so sick of this guy that I just get in my car, tell him to go screw himself, slam the door, and get out of there. I haven't seen him since, but I work pretty much every day, so it's only a matter of time. So basically, to the creepy guy in a Korn shirt who pulled a knife on me in the Walmart parking lot, I hope we never meet again.
I dated this man for about 2.5 years, and he nearly killed me. Very physically abusive, emotionally, all of it. The last time he hurt me was because I told him I was moving, and I was gonna have a roommate. He didn't like that. He strangled me twice and punched me in the face. I escaped and called the cops. He got arrested a few days later. Until then, though, he was coaching me on how I needed to go back to law enforcement and state that I hit myself, and he didn't really strangle me, that I stopped taking my psychiatric medication and was having a psychotic break that night. At the first hearing, I recanted and told the judge all the lies my ex told me to. The judge believed me, and he was set to get released from jail, but he was still under state county hold or something like that before he was supposed to get released. I went back to law enforcement after gaining some clarity and told them the truth again, in which another hearing was scheduled. Undoubtedly, my ex was notified of the reason why another hearing was being scheduled. He was a gang member. Obviously, I will not be saying which one. And as previously mentioned, by now I had moved into the new house with my roommate. But before he got arrested, he asked me where I was moving, and I told him which street corner the house was on, very stupidly. Well, my roommate's boyfriend at the time was affiliated as well. We were with some real winners, huh? And he was apparently notified that my house had been marked by the gang that my ex belonged to, and that showed true. One morning at around 6 a.m., my roommate and her boyfriend were sitting in the driveway in her car with the lights off. I was inside the house asleep. A car then pulled up in front of my house, blocking the driveway, preventing my roommate from pulling her car out. We're still unsure whether or not these people initially knew that there were people sitting in my roommate's car. The mystery car sat blocking the driveway for a few minutes before a man got out of the passenger seat and began walking directly up the driveway to my porch. Luckily, my roommate's boyfriend had a gun on him, and once he saw the man walking towards the front door, he got out of my roommate's car and flashed his gun at the man. The man saw it and ran back to the car, which then sped off. Maybe a few weeks later, I had driven to the gas station a few streets over after the sun had gone down. I was getting a vape or something. When I was walking back to my car out of the gas station, a man in the same car that was in front of my house pulled up next to me and started yelling something. I couldn't tell what he was saying before I just yelled back, "Shut up and leave me alone," thinking I was just being randomly catcalled. I got in my car and went to pull out of the gas station, noticing his car was sitting in front of the exit that I was going to take and not moving. So I went out a different exit and turned back onto the street that my house was on. I looked behind me and saw him following me. He waited for me to leave before he pulled out behind me and followed me. I started going down different streets and kept tailing. So eventually I freaked out and sped up real fast and made a quick, impulsive turn that threw him off my track. I didn't go home. Another day I came home from work and saw that the window in our dining room that looks out the backyard, the only window on the first story that doesn't have iron bars guarding it from the inside, had been tampered with from the outside. It had a screen secured to it so that the window may be opened, and the screen had been ripped off. We reattached it and tried to rip it off ourselves, and it was very hard. My roommate's boyfriend was able to, but we weren't strong enough. It would have taken a lot of effort to get that screen off. Last instance, my roommate's boyfriend and his friend had left our house to go on a walk. When they came back, as they were walking back up to my house, they saw two men peeking through the other dining room window, trying to see inside. They noticed my roommate's boyfriend as he started yelling at them, asking what the heck they were doing, and they scurried away. Me and my ex's final hearing happened a few months ago, and I have gotten him locked up until 2036. I think maybe his fellow gangbangers have realized that a man locked up for the next 12 years is not worth risking their freedom for anymore. And I have since been left alone. I work at a big retail store as a self-checkout host. Most of my days are spent walking laps and listening to customers saying things like, "I don't work here," or "Why aren't you on the register?" I understood their frustrations. Usually there would be 2 or 3 of us at the self-checkout, and maybe 2 manned registers open. We got a new guy in. Let's call him Terry. Terry always wore a mask as if it was 2021 and COVID was still COVIDing. I was training him, telling him to stock candy in bags. He would ask questions anyone would ask. If I'm in school, if I have a girlfriend. I lived in a small city/big town that had a good college. Students from all over the country would come and usually wound up with the prisons or retail. I usually asked the same questions. I told him no on both accounts. He then asked if I ever went hunting. We had a lot of woods and a big forest around the town. No, I don't like guns. He said he'd have to take me one day. A few days go by and he's over on my side again. He asks if I have family in town, and if they didn't, do they live close by? I live 3 doors down from my mom. He starts talking about hunting again, how he was out with his buddies and started using pack tactics, where they would box in the prey and finish it off. Weird for deer, seeing as they flee at the first thought of a noise. He's off for a few days because new hires have problems getting hours for the first 3 weeks. I talk to one of my coworkers, and they tell me that he asks a lot about me. The next time I see him, his questions are very telling. How tall would you say you are? How much do you weigh? How well do you know the woods past so-and-so street? I'm a big guy at 6 foot and 300 pounds, and when he brought up hunting again, a creepy thought would send a chill down my spine. Come on, man. You'd like it. Just some good old boys shooting the crap late at night in the middle of the woods. Then the real fun starts right before dawn. They won't know what hit him. The mask hid most of his face, but I could see it rise when he smiled. I don't know why he thought that would be a great way to convince someone. Other than feeling like they were about to hunt me, it sounded like I would have been bored as crap before. I must have made a face or something because he turned and walked away quickly. I told a couple of coworkers about it, but that was his last day. I never saw him again, and I hope that I never do. I came back from getting some parts for my car when I find a note on my windshield. This guy has 8 cars just like mine that he is looking to part out. I thought, aw, sweet, cheap parts. I text him, and it turns out he's looking for someone to take some engines out, which on my car is a lot harder to do if you don't have a lift. Very little wiggle room as they go up from the bottom, but he'd trade my labor for the parts. Okay, that doesn't sound too bad. It's maybe an hour per car with air tools. He says he has 4 post lift and tools. I roll up to his shop the next day, but it's actually a construction business. But I don't see any signs of construction. No materials, no power tools, nothing of a construction nature. There's 3 giant machine sheds on his property. I'm talking 50 feet wide, 100 feet long. First thing the guy asks me is if I have any tools. Well, no. I didn't plan on it, nor was that discussed. Oh, don't worry, I have tools. Except his tools were a toolkit from a hardware store, and looked like they had been rained on for 30 years. One of the ratchets had hardly any teeth, and was a pain to use. I spent 3 hours getting to these parts, partially due to the tools, but then it gets weirder. He shows me this car, and turns out he had wrecked it. Then another, he wrecked. This one blew the engine because I was stuck in a snowbank. Okay. Then I hear gunshots in the distance, and asked if there was a shooting range nearby. He kind of goes on a rant about it's his neighbors, but they always call the cops and blame it on me. I can shoot my guns when I want, where I want. Okay. Then his story changes, and not only does he want me to pull some engines, but put a few engines in cars too. What the heck? I thought you owned a shop. There's maybe $50 worth of parts here. I'm not doing all that. In fact, I'd be donating a bit of my time pulling motors, but I like helping people. Last thing he says to me is let me know if you need anything. 2 hours pass and I get all the parts pulled, and set them on a tailgate of a truck to show him exactly what I took off. Except he has totally vanished. I walk back to the only machine shed with the door open, and it's completely full of stuff. There's literally pallet racking, shelving you'd see at Home Depot, full of stuff. Retail shelving displays for candy and other things from the 80s and 90s. A dozen ice cream freezers like you'd see in a gas station. 20 newer dishwashers. 10 newer front-loading washing machines. I mean literally an indescribable amount of things. I notice near the roll-up door there's a camper. It's apparent to me this dude lives in it. Except there doesn't appear to be any running water or electricity. But he's not in it. It's clear to me that this person is a hoarder to the 10th power. All I can think of is his father must have been loaded, running a construction company, and left him a multi-million-dollar inheritance. It would take a lot of money to fill up over 22,000 square foot of machine shed with random stuff. Because unlike most hoarders who have garbage, newspapers, and other debris, 99% of his stuff had some value. But like I said, I didn't see one bit of construction material. I drive up the entryway and the gate is closed and locked. What the heck? He never told me that he was going anywhere. Luckily, the gate didn't have an actual fence, and I had to drive my car through a field and drainage ditch to get back onto the highway. I'd taken the parts with me and I planned on coming back. But then the more I thought about it, the more creeped out I was, especially since I was kind of kept there when he left and shut the driveway gate. Thank you so much for listening to all of the stories in this video. I hope you enjoyed them. I also hope that you enjoyed the extra rain at the end. Get a good night's sleep, everyone, and I'll read to you in the next video. Bye-bye now.